All right. Fascinating. Now, have you had any other experiences like this where there was someone else, and I'm not talking about on these bases, but I'm talking about like an innocent bystander, when an innocent bystander was there when you were abducted or something really weird happened?
A couple of years back, I was on a radio show. It was actually live, and I was physically there, and a group by the name of the White Mountain Boys showed up. And later on, I had looked it up, and they were connected to like some kind of military, like undergo. You know what I mean? Like they weren't really noticed, but they were still noticed, type like secretly. The White Mountain Boys.
So you're saying some human beings showed up at a radio station or something while you were being interviewed?
Yes, and also it felt like they were trying to do something to me, manipulate me, so I ran and they chased me out of the show, and I got in the car and I slammed the door shut and I went to turn the key on, and the car wouldn't even start.
And so then they were surrounding your car and you were locked inside your car?
Yeah, but then eventually it started up and I peeled off.
Yeah, but don't you think it's kind of weird? This is very interesting that you bring up this experience. Don't you think that it's kind of weird that you were actually able to run away from some, I'm guessing, special forces type guys? You were able to get away from them just barely, and you were in the car or whatever. In other words, think about this. Some of these Bigfoot experiences and some of these Dogman experiences, the people just barely get away. You know what I mean? And when yet this creature is so huge, it's so fast, it can do all this shit. And here you are being surrounded by some special forces guys, and you just barely get away, barely get in that car. It's either as if they let you kind of get away, or they, for some reason, couldn't. Something was stopped preventing them from grabbing you, and as if the whole experience was to generate fear in you. Do you think that's possible?
Right.
Do you think that's possible?
Oh yes, absolutely.
So they weren't really, they were trying to intimidate you maybe, but they definitely weren't trying to catch you, or they would have maybe got some vehicles and chased you, or they would have cornered you. They would have messed with they would have had your car surrounded before they even went in there.
Yeah, it was just a scary situation because it was unexpected, and they just showed up without even asking, and even the host had contacted me, and I don't even speak to him anymore because that wasn't the first time that happened, but he brought somebody else on that ended up, she was like working for the Air Force, and at that time I was wearing a mask, so I felt a little bit more comfortable, and she told me to take my mask off. And I said, why? What do you want from me? And she said, I want to see who you are. And I said, well, you're not seeing who I am. And I left. I left again, and that was it. I never went back on that show again. So I think that they were kind of like injected into my life to cause
Okay.
harm.
Where did these tapings take place? At a radio station?
Yes, at the radio station.
In what city?
This was in New York, when I was living in New York.
Okay. Now, and Sean, it's understood, don't worry about being rude or anything. Whenever I ask you a question that you don't want to give the answer to, just say, I'd rather not answer that or whatever. There's already been at least one military base that you didn't want to name. Is this show still in existence? Is it something I may have heard of?
We don't have to talk about that right now.
Okay. Now, let's talk about some of these bases that you were at as a child. You're telling me that your mama signed some papers that allowed them to take you from school and do testing on you and stuff?
Yes.
Okay, were you in one of these quote unquote gifted and talented type programs?
Special needs classes.
Special needs, so that has a stigma on it, and that's almost as if y'all had the other students might have thought that y'all had a learning disability or something, right?
Yes, that's right.
Right, and so it sounds like on these classes where they test people and do these weird shit to them, they got different ways they can play it off. They can play it off like you're super smart, or that you got a learning disability or something like that, and that can be part of the experiment on the way that the other kids react to you, because they're in a normal classroom, and you know the whole school turns into a laboratory.
Right.
So was there teachers or the principal, obviously there was somebody at this school that knew what was going on?
Oh yes, absolutely.
Now, was this whole school for special needs, or was it just a regular school like everybody else went to?
Well, there were all different kinds of classes, different classrooms, but the special needs units were the ones that were taken to, like, I said, one of them is Brookhaven Lab. I don't mind, putting it out there, but that was one of them. And there were a few others out here, places, and, we don't have to go there, because it seems every time I go there, we spoke earlier about two different individuals that I feel are of the dark side, not of the light.
Okay, and when you mention these people, do things happen in your life?
I'm sorry, repeat that?
When you mention one of these people, I think SS and then the other guy who's kind of like a stellar body, when you mention them, do you get some adverse effects in your life?
Do I get some adverse effects in my life?
Yes.
Yeah.
Okay, that's all I wanted to know. And I had my suspicions about SS. SS has a group, you can join his website or whatever and be a guest or whatever, or log in and all this stuff. And really, I think they're just trying to find people to be their next people that they're going to manipulate or whatever. But I used to think that he was not necessarily one of the good guys, but just kind of neutral. You know what I mean? I didn't expect him to be one of the good guys because of all the horrific shit that he'd been through. But you mentioned earlier in our interview earlier that some of these places you went, the other children were also perpetrating acts of rape and torture and stuff like that on the other children. And I think that this fellow we were talking about, SS, he's as much as admitted that he was kind of one of the one that kind of organized the boys, and he probably helped rape them and stuff. Right, okay. In other words, there'll be older boys that have already, this been done to them in the years past, and now they're trained to turn around and do it.
Right, exactly.
Now, because it makes you wonder on the question of humanity when we hear about some of these horrific stories, like that they're trying to traumatize these children, and they'll have them in a cage, and they'll actually let wild animals into one cage and have children be eaten to death by wild animals while the children in the next cage are watching in horror. Have you ever heard of anything like that? Are you okay, Sean?
Yeah.
Have you ever heard of anything like that?
I've seen on actual missions similar things. It seems like, off-planet life forms. It's been said by a bunch of people, they like to eat babies. Like there's reptilians that like to eat children. And it's sick. Another one is the Queen. Look with the Queen of England.
Well, yeah, we know that in Canada, she went and visited one of these Indian schools, and there's a man living today whose sister, the Queen and the Prince Philip or whatever his name is, took like a group of 12 children with them or something like that, and these children were never seen again. And one of the girls, there was a girl in that group, and her brother was witness to this, to them being taken, and he never saw his sister again. And that was 50 years ago or whatever, or more or longer. And so, that's pretty damning. There's definitely something going on with the royals. The world is just not what we've been told it is at all.
That's right.
Okay. Now, the subject of the secret space program. I've had on my show several times Kevin Trimmel. Do you know Kevin Trimmel? Or do you know who he is?
No. I've been away from the groups for a while because I wanted to pull myself together and work on my healing to try to find the real answers and not let this dark force take that away from me, so I can let the world know that this is definitely real. It's still going on. Just because, and I spoke with a gentleman the other day about this, but this is going on in every city, huge city, state park. Anywhere where there's a state park, there's a facility.
Bingo! Bingo! Yeah, state parks. That you opened a whole can of worms there. And I have been investigating state parks. There is a man named David Paulides who has written a series of books called Missing 411 that shows that state parks and national parks supposedly do not keep lists of missing people, and you are like 100 times more likely to go missing if you're visiting a state park or a national park than anything else. Probably even more than a war zone. So it's, let me just tell the viewers right now, hey listen, just based on that alone, I wouldn't be in too much of a hurry to take my family to Yellowstone National Park or anything like that, or especially like Glacier National Park, or there's a couple others that or like where Mount Shasta is. I mean, let me tell you, there's some fucked up shit going on. And there's a Bigfoot connection. There's a lot of different connections, and some of these children are abducted. Also, elderly people, also people with disabilities seem to be abducted quite a bit. But when a child is abducted, and on the rare case where they are still recovered, they're found alive in a place that's already been searched 20 times. I mean, we're like right out in the open, where there was like 100 people earlier, And then also the children are bewildered and do not seem to know what happened, except maybe a bear helped them or something like that. They have some weird story. But Sean, I have got several topics that I research. Obviously, mind control is one of them. MK Ultra. You already know a little bit about the history of my family, and that the fact that I'm on the pharaonic I'm on the bloodlines of the pharaonic dominators, for better or for worse. I do investigations at Ghostlight Road. And Ghostlight Road is in the Big Thicket area of Texas, which is one of the most diverse ecosystems on the planet, believe it or not. It's actually classified as a jungle. In the continental United States, not including Hawaii, but in the continental United States, there are 2 scientifically classified jungles. And one of them is in Florida. It starts with an S. The name would be very familiar to anyone listening. It's a swampy, area, whatever, Florida. And the other one, believe it or not, is in Texas. And when you think of Texas, you don't think of jungles. But yeah, there is not a jungle-like, but literally a jungle in Texas by all scientific definitions. And there's flesh-eating plants. There's so many diverse biospheres and ecospheres. You've got ecospheres overlapping one another, creating unique ecospheres that are not seen anywhere else on the planet. And on top of that, throughout this whole area is rife with every type of paranormal phenomenon that you've ever even heard of. All overlapping. It's one of the most biggest paranormal hotspots on the planet. We're talking big cat sightings. Of course, Bigfoot. The list goes on and on. Pterodactyl sightings. Thunderbird sightings. Huge, like dinosaur type birds, you know what I mean? And one thing that we hardly ever hear of, and this is proto-human sightings. In other words, there's been 2 different sightings down there where men working off in the middle of the wilds of the Big Thicket Forest, high up on electrical, like not phone poles, but electrical poles, these big metal structures that carry these, electrical wires through great distances. We're up there on those things and we're surrounded by basically cavemen. And we're attacked with rudimentary bows and arrows and spears and stuff. Not fucking bizarre. So in other words, read between the lines. There's some type of time warp going on there. Some type of portal to another time or another dimension. And they were literally surrounded by cavemen. But once again, just like your experience, the arrows never seemed to quite hit. They somehow escaped with their life. That's the one thing that's very unusual about a lot of these experiences. And so if it makes you think, okay, well, the person who's it's happening to, you think they're trying to get you, you think they're trying to kill you, but they never quite do, and you're still alive. So then what could possibly be the reason? Well, what was the outcome of this experience? Fear. Total fear. And so we must ask ourselves, was that the goal to begin with? To extract fear, to extract loosh from you, or some type of fear, to extract it as a food or as an energy source. What do you think about that?
Oh, definitely. Like they would, I remember would like say, oh, we're going to pay you lots of money and, we're going to help you and, we're going to give you this and, like basically we're God. And then that's how they, would, as a young child, obviously you're going to eventually give in, unwillingly. But a gentleman said in the movie Montauk Chronicles, The Man in the Mask, he said, kids die mainly because of fear. Fear, they were scared to death.
Scared to death. Yeah, that's the concept right there. And we hear about this adrenochrome. Have you heard of this adrenochrome?
I'm sorry?
Have you heard of adrenochrome? Adrenochrome. It
sounds familiar, but it's not registering at the moment.
Adrenochrome, and SS talks about this, and it's a big subject right now. But let me tell you, the adrenochrome, this is what they say. When they have these human sacrifices, it's not just enough to sacrifice these people and to, drink their blood or whatever they do. They have to terrorize these people before they sacrifice them, because that makes the adrenal gland release this chemical into their blood that makes their blood so much more delicious to these vampiric beings, to where it's like a drug, to where these beings that are actually sucking blood, like blood-sucking vampires, it's like a steak, or it's like a great meal for them to drink your blood. But if there's fear in that blood, if you're literally shaking with fear, and then they get your blood, it's like a drug. It's like cocaine times 100. And that's what they're after. And that's why they try to scare the shit out of you right before they sacrifice you. And science has found a compound. This is science, and they call it adrenochrome. And this is something that is in your blood, physically in your blood, when somebody is literally scared to death right before they die. And this is actually, I've seen now, and there's even a website for this. This is how sick this shit is. There's groups you can join. These are totally illegal. This one group, they do not accept American citizens at all. You can go to jail. Of course you can go to jail. But it's a way that they're selling this adrenochrome for people to consume. Like, you just have some at home and you drink it. You know. But American citizens cannot be a part of it. Isn't that sick?
Wow.
Isn't that sick? You know, and one thing we see with this, and I hate to bring up Pizzagate, because that's kind of my a policy I have, not to talk about the political aspect of that or something like that. But unfortunately, we hear, I don't know how true this is, you might have a comment on this, a lot of times who's really considered expendable in this game of killing children and stuff like that is basically brown kids. Little brown kids and little black kids are just totally expendable. Have you ever had that idea or seen that type of process where there's a type of racism?
Where there's a type of what?
Racism, like the idea that in some of these groups that a black life or a brown life is not as worth as much as a white life.
Oh, I believe that like the Bloods, the Crips, all different gangs are created by the government for population control reasons, because they're going around and they're shooting one another over colors. Because you got blue in your pocket, let me shoot you. I got red in my pocket. So it's like a game. And, gangs are definitely, especially, white supremacists, they, taking these symbols, like the Nazi symbol and all of that, and making it like it's, something that it's not, you know what I mean? White supremacists, like, that disgusts me. I'm not a racist person. So.
I'm not either. And let me tell you, you are spot on. That observation about the Crips and the Bloods, spot on. Did you know that there was a time when they were trying to resolve the whole East Coast, West Coast feud, which of course was created by, I'm sure, some type of alphabet agencies. And I don't know if you remember this moment in history, but they invited some of the leading Crips and some of the leading Bloods to have a peace treaty meeting in the White House. Do you remember that? Back in the late 80s? With George Bush. With George Bush. George Bush meeting with the Crips and meeting with the Bloods. I mean, can you fucking believe that? 1,000 places. But hey,
it's sad, but it's the world we live in. It's power and control.
Yes,
they want power over everybody. They want control over everybody, and they just want you to be a sheep, ready to slaughter.
That's right. And there's even that's true, and that's it, but it's even more sophisticated than that, Sean. And I don't know what it is. but I am suspecting, after spending a lifetime obsessed with observing this reality, this life, and trying to figure out its meaning, I have, you know, like when it comes to conspiracy theories and stuff like that we're talking about,